The stars above the alien empire shimmered like shards of glass scattered across the velvet sky. Among them, the palace of the alien Queen Lysera floated like a crown of light and shadow, its spires piercing the void. Inside, the queen sat on her throne, carved from black crystal and pulsing with a faint inner glow, her gaze fixed on the reports hovering before her. Her empire spanned countless worlds, civilizations bending before her will, yet tonight, something stirred an unfamiliar feeling deep within her chest, curiosity. "The humans," one of her generals reported with a bow, "their ships have breached the outer edge of our empire. One vessel survived our patrols and has entered the asteroid belt near Vera's moon." She had conquered entire races, torn through empires, and seen worlds crumble beneath her touch. How could a single human warrior, or even a fleet, pose any threat to her? Yet the general's murmurs of awe and fear clung stubbornly to her mind like smoke that would not disperse. She rose from her throne, her movements fluid, commanding. The palace corridors seemed to bend around her, shadows retreating at her approach. Lysera moved to the balcony that overlooked the alien city below. The streets glimmered with crystalline lights, towers spiraling like frozen flames. From this height, she could see the pulse of her empire, the hum of life under her rule, and the certainty that nothing could challenge her. Yet somewhere at the edge of the empire, a human ship moved like a shadow against the stars, carrying the echo of whispered legends. Meanwhile, on the distant planet of Idara Prime, the human warrior Kale prepared for the journey that would bring him face to face with the queen herself. His ship, sleek and functional, hummed with quiet energy as he moved among his crew. The humans were a small fleet, trained for survival, cunning in ways Lysera could never anticipate. Their people had endured centuries under alien domination, honing their courage, resourcefulness, and faith in their leader. Kale was their legend. Strong, sharp, and unyielding, he carried the weight of his people's hope on his broad shoulders. Yet in his chest beat more than duty. There was the thrill of challenge, the pull of destiny, and a quiet longing he rarely admitted even to himself. The stars had guided him across the void, but the truth was, Kale did not know what awaited him in Lysera's empire. He only knew that humans had survived against odds no other species could imagine, and that their time to reclaim their place had come. As his ship slipped through the asteroid belt, Kale gazed out at the glittering void. Legends spoke of the queen's cruelty, her power that bent worlds to her will. Yet he felt no fear, only the steady pulse of determination. Somewhere beyond the next cluster of asteroids lay the alien palace, and beyond that, Lysera herself. Back in her palace, Lysera's curiosity grew. She dismissed the reports at first, imagining a single ship lost in the vast expanse. But the persistence of intelligence streams, rumors of human resilience, whispers of their leader's courage stirred an emotion she did not recognize: fascination. A spark ignited in her mind, dangerous in its unfamiliarity. The queen, accustomed to obedience, to fear, to control, now found herself wondering about the creatures her empire had long dismissed. She moved through her private chambers, her footsteps silent on the crystal floors. Hololiths projected images of humans from distant worlds, warriors standing against impossible odds, refusing to bow, refusing to surrender. Lysera's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "So the humans exist," she murmured, "not just as stories, but as something more." Her advisors would have called it folly, weakness, or sentimentality, but she did not care. Something about these humans, their courage and tenacity, gnawed at her. Suddenly, a direct message arrived on her private channel. The words burned across the holographic display. Lysera stared, the letters hovering in the air. The signature was clear: Kale, commander of the human resistance. Her pulse, long steady and unshakable, quickened, not with fear but with something else. Intrigue, respect, something she could not name. The council of generals bowed nervously, awaiting her command. "What is it?" one asked, voice tight. "Nothing," Lysera said softly, her eyes still fixed on the message. "Only a human claiming to stand against me." The city below glittered, beautiful and silent, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on a warrior who dared to challenge her. As the night deepened, Lysera allowed herself a rare indulgence. She imagined the human warrior, his eyes steady, his resolve unshaken. She imagined meeting him face to face, feeling the weight of his courage, the quiet power of someone unbroken by centuries of fear. Her chest tightened with a strange emotion, one that was not anger nor excitement, but something she could not name. And somewhere across the void, Kale's ship drifted closer to the heart of her empire. He knew the stories, knew the myths of the immortal queen, but he did not falter. Humans were survivors, and survivors were born to defy impossibility. Lysera, ever proud and untouchable, had dismissed human warriors as nothing more than legends. Now she faced the truth. One human was on the path to meet her, to stand before her, to test her in ways no star or empire ever had. A storm began to form in the distant atmosphere, swirling with colors no human eye had ever seen, reflecting the tension growing between the immortal queen and the mortal warrior. Lysera's heart, shielded for centuries, felt the first stirrings of anticipation, and perhaps something closer to fear. The stars outside the palace shone like scattered promises, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. And for the first time in her reign, Lysera felt the thrill of uncertainty. She straightened on her balcony, her long fingers brushing the cool crystal railing. The words of the human warrior echoed again in her mind, bold and unyielding. "I come for you." Legends were about to collide with reality, and neither the queen nor the warrior could predict the consequences. The night deepened. The alien city glowed with quiet life, the stars pulsed with silent anticipation, and two destinies moved inexorably toward each other, one of immortal power, the other of unbroken human courage. And in the shadows of her throne room, Lysera whispered again, more to herself than anyone else. The hum of its engines mingled with the whispers of the wind in the crystalline towers below. Tonight she would see the human warrior, Kale, face to face. For the first time in centuries, curiosity was not enough. She needed certainty. Kale stood at the edge of the human settlement on the planet of Vera's moon. The ruins were ancient, carved from crystal and stone, remnants of civilizations long swallowed by time and conquest. Fires burned low along the outer walls, their glow painting his sharp features in gold and amber. His eyes, steady and unflinching, scanned the skies for the alien vessel he had been warned about. And then it appeared, a shadow across the moonlight, moving with impossible grace. Lysera's ship descended like a falling star, landing softly on the shattered stones of the outer plaza. Her presence radiated authority, her armor shimmered with light that seemed alive, shifting like liquid silver and black. Kale did not flinch. The humans around him instinctively fell back, whispers of awe and fear cutting the night air. But he remained, standing tall, the weight of his people's hopes on his shoulders. He had prepared for this moment for years, and now it had come, the legend against the legend, the mortal against the immortal. Lysera emerged first, her form flawless and imposing. Every step she took resonated with power, elegance, and danger. She studied Kale as if examining a strange artifact, her eyes narrowing. There was no fear in him. None, that alone was remarkable. "You are Kale," she said, her voice a melody of ice and flame. "The human who dares to speak against me. Why do you come? Curiosity, desperation, or the foolish hope of victory?" "I come because your terror ends now. Not for my glory, not for conquest, because your reign has cost too many lives. I will not kneel and I will not beg. I stand because someone must." She took a step closer, the air shimmering slightly as her presence stretched outward, bending shadows and light alike. "Bold words for a human," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "Do you understand the meaning of facing me? Your life will end before your fleet can react. Do you even know the cost of your rebellion? But I will not allow fear to rule my people." A gust of wind swept across the plaza, stirring the glowing dust, reflecting their silhouettes in strange, fragmented patterns. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, Lysera raised her hand, and the air itself seemed to obey her command. Energy rippled outward, bending around her like invisible waves. Kale shifted, preparing for a fight, but he noticed something unusual. Lysera's power was magnificent, yes, but controlled. She did not strike with immediate intent to kill. There was a pause, an assessment, a consideration that made him think. She is not merely testing my strength, she is testing my character. "You are strong," she said finally, stepping closer, her presence overwhelming. "Stronger than I anticipated, but strength alone does not defeat centuries of experience. Do you wish to test yourself against me?" Lysera moved with speed beyond comprehension, her attacks a dance of light and shadow. Kale met her strikes with precision, every movement deliberate, every step calculated. The humans could only watch in awe as their commander parried blows that could have shattered mountains. Time seemed to stretch. Sparks of energy collided, illuminating the ruins in flashes of silver and violet. Kale realized that Lysera's skill was not just raw power, it was intelligence, strategy, centuries of calculated experience. Yet he adapted, weaving his own instincts and intuition into the battle. Lysera's laughter rang out, soft and melodic, like wind through crystal towers. "Impressive," she said. "I expected fear, hesitation, but you are fearless." Perhaps this human legend is more than a story. He had not won, not yet, but he had survived. And more importantly, he had shown her something unexpected. The heart of humanity was unbreakable. Lysera watched him retreat, a flicker of admiration and perhaps something else passing through her eyes. She had faced empires, rebellions, even traitors from her own ranks, but this human stirred something long buried within her: curiosity, fascination, and a strange, unfamiliar warmth. The night deepened, the stars reflecting the tension that had settled over the ruins. Kale returned to his men, silently signaling them to retreat further into the safety of the outer walls. He knew this was only the beginning. The queen would return, stronger and more cunning, and he would need every ounce of his skill and courage to survive. Lysera returned to her ship, moving through the corridors with silent grace. Her thoughts were consumed with the human warrior, his defiance, and the fire in his eyes. She had dismissed humans as fragile legends, whispers of distant worlds. Yet Kale had proven that even legends could become reality, and reality could challenge her in ways she had never imagined. She reached her private chamber, staring out into the endless night. Her mind replayed every movement, every word, every glance. The warrior had not bowed. He had not begged. He had stood, unbroken, facing the immortal queen herself. And in that stance, Lysera felt something awaken within her, a desire to see him again, to measure him against herself, to understand the strength that had survived centuries of oppression. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the ruins, Kale looked up at the alien stars. He knew she was watching. He knew the immortal queen would not forget this encounter. Yet he felt a thrill he had never known. The first moment in which he faced not just a ruler, but a being whose power could rival the gods themselves, and yet whose presence inspired awe and something more. The wind whispered across the ruins, carrying the echo of their clash, the unspoken tension, the spark of curiosity that would not be denied. Both warrior and queen understood without words that this was only the beginning. Their fates were intertwined, bound by challenge, defiance, and the strange pull of recognition. And Lysera, standing once more in her chamber, allowed herself a rare thought. The human legend had arrived. Not as a story, not as a myth, but as a living, breathing force that dared to stand before her, and perhaps, in doing so, awaken something she had long denied in herself. The stars glimmered over the empire, silent witnesses to a meeting that would be remembered for centuries. And in the shadowed corridors of the palace, the queen whispered, almost to herself, "Perhaps this human will teach me something, about courage, about life, and perhaps about desire." A distant comet streaked across the alien sky, a silent omen of the collision of legends yet to come. And both the queen and the warrior knew, in their own way, that destiny had begun to weave its web around them, delicate, dangerous, and inescapable. The war between humans and aliens had slowed to a tense stalemate. On the shattered moons of Lysera's empire, smoke curled from broken cities, fires flickering like tiny stars among the ruins. Yet the human fleet remained, hiding among asteroid fields, striking quickly and vanishing before the alien forces could respond. Kale watched from the bridge of his flagship, eyes sharp, mind sharper. Every day brought a new challenge, every victory a new risk. But tonight the stars felt heavier, charged with something more than war. Far above, in the heart of her crystal palace, Lysera stood overlooking the distant battlefield. Reports streamed across her consoles, Kale's movements precise, his attacks daring, his people surviving against odds even she had not expected. She leaned on the balcony, her long fingers brushing the glassy railing, feeling the strange pull of fascination again. For centuries, she had been untouched by emotion, untouched by hope or fear. And yet the human warrior's defiance gnawed at her, awakening a warmth she had long denied. Kale had not only survived, he had thrived. And in surviving, he had challenged her, not through brute force, but through courage, strategy, and an unbreakable will. She felt an emotion she could not name, admiration, curiosity, something closer to longing. Meanwhile, Kale faced a different kind of struggle. One of his closest allies, Lieutenant Mara, had been captured during a reconnaissance mission. She was skilled, fearless, and irreplaceable. Without her, his plans would falter. Kale knew he could not simply storm the alien stronghold. The Queen's presence was enough to repel armies. Yet he could not abandon his people, nor could he leave Mara to the Queen's mercy. Lysera watched him indirectly, curious to see how he would respond. She could have destroyed him easily, crushed his fleet with a single command. Yet she did not. She wanted to see his choices, his courage, his morality, and she found herself secretly aiding him, diverting patrols, leaving hidden pathways, sending resources through channels no one else could find. Each act carried the faintest thrill of danger. She was bending her empire to allow a mortal human a chance to succeed. The two leaders moved like shadows and light across the cosmos, circling one another in strategy and spirit. And with every encounter, every near battle, the tension between them deepened. Words exchanged via secure channels were filled with double meanings, subtle respect, and unspoken curiosity. Kale admired her brilliance, even as he despised her conquests. Lysera admired his bravery, even as she recognized his stubborn morality. One night, Kale led a small team on a daring mission to rescue Mara. The plan was precise: infiltrate an abandoned citadel on the edge of the Empire, where she was held under minimal guard, and vanish before Lysera's forces could respond. They moved silently, navigating crystalline corridors and fractured towers, their shadows stretched long and sharp by the alien lights. As Kale and his team approached the inner chamber, alarms suddenly blared. Alien sentries rushed toward them from hidden alcoves. Kale's pulse quickened, yet his mind remained steady. Then, without warning, a wall of energy erupted, pushing the sentries aside without harming the humans. The energy shimmered like liquid light, and Kale froze. "Lysera," he whispered, realization dawning. The Queen had intervened, not to kill, but to protect him. From the shadows, her voice echoed softly. "I am watching, human. You move with courage and wisdom, but do not mistake my interference for weakness." But instead, a new emotion stirred, gratitude mixed with suspicion, admiration mixed with caution. Mara ran to him, her eyes wide with relief. "Kale, you didn't come alone," she said, noticing the subtle signs of Lysera's influence. "No," Kale said, voice calm. "Someone is watching us, someone powerful." He did not name her aloud. Naming her would give her a presence in their minds that he could not allow just yet. After the rescue, Kale retreated with his team to the safety of the asteroid belt. Alone in his cabin, he studied the stars, pondering the Queen who had saved him, yet remained his greatest adversary. What did it mean that she had intervened? Was it strategy, amusement, or something personal? Far away, Lysera studied him in turn. In her private chamber, she traced his image across her hololiths, studying his gestures, his choices, the courage in his eyes. She had expected fear, hesitation, perhaps arrogance, but never the quiet strength he carried. And with each observation, the pull in her chest grew stronger, mingling curiosity with a feeling she did not fully understand. She stood by the balcony, looking out at the alien moons. The wind carried the faint hum of distant engines, the reminders of war and survival. Yet her mind was not on conquest, not on strategy, not even on her empire. It was on him, the human warrior who moved like a shadow through impossible odds, who faced her with unwavering courage, and who had, without knowing, touched something long dormant inside her. Kale, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his choices. His people celebrated the rescue, but he could not rest. The Queen's interference had changed everything. She was no longer an abstract threat. She was tangible, intelligent, and unpredictable. And he felt, despite himself, a strange pull toward her, a recognition that their destinies were entangled, even if they were enemies. The human fleet prepared for their next move, unaware that the Queen's eyes were upon them at every turn. Lysera adjusted her strategy, allowing small victories to the humans, observing their resilience, their decisions, and the quiet humanity that no conquest could erase. She found herself asking questions she had long avoided. What did it mean to respect courage? To admire someone who could defy you without fear? To feel longing? One evening, Kale stood at the edge of the asteroid field, looking at the alien stars. He knew the Queen was watching, knew her interventions had saved his life. And yet, he could not decide if he despised her brilliance or admired it. The tension twisted inside him, like the currents of a storm he could not escape. Lysera, in the heart of her palace, whispered to herself again, "Interesting, very interesting. Perhaps this human will teach me something about life, about strength, and perhaps even about myself." Kale's fleet moved with daring precision, and Lysera countered with intelligence and restraint, neither giving the other full victory. And in this delicate dance, a connection formed, invisible yet undeniable. They had not spoken in person for weeks, yet every choice, every action, every small victory was a conversation. Kale saw her mercy, her intellect, her hidden respect for life beyond conquest. Lysera saw his courage, his morality, his unwavering devotion to his people, and both felt the dangerous stirrings of admiration, fascination, and a hint of desire. One night, as Kale prepared another mission into the heart of the Empire, a strange energy pulsed across the asteroid belt. Lysera's influence was subtle but deliberate, a warning, a test, and perhaps an invitation all at once. Kale felt it, a presence brushing against his mind, guiding him slightly, daring him to notice. He looked at the stars and whispered almost to himself, "She is watching. Always watching." The galaxy stretched vast and endless between them, yet their destinies were intertwined, like threads of light drawn together by a force neither could resist. Both felt the thrill and the danger of what was to come. And somewhere in the silence, in the cold glow of alien moons, a thought flickered in Lysera's mind. The night carried on, the stars watching silently, as warrior and queen moved ever closer to the moment when their paths would collide, not in war alone, but in the delicate, dangerous dance of hearts, minds, and fates intertwined. The ancient citadel hovered over the planet like a crown of shadows, its crystal towers reflecting starlight that danced across the broken surface below. Within its walls, the heart of Lysera's power waited, an artifact older than empires, humming with energy that could bend worlds. Tonight it would determine the fate of two civilizations and the bond between two legends. Kale's fleet hovered at the edge of the citadel, cloaked in shadow. His people prepared for the impossible, an assault on the very heart of the alien empire. Yet Kale knew the truth. This mission was not merely about survival or victory. It was about understanding the immortal queen he had faced, and perhaps about changing her forever. Inside the citadel, Lysera paced the chamber where the artifact floated, a pulsing orb of light and shadow. Her mind was alive with thoughts of Kale, the human who had defied centuries of her power, who had survived her strategies, and who had stirred something long buried in her heart. She knew he would come. Somehow she always knew. When Kale entered the citadel with a small team, the air seemed to hum with anticipation. The walls glimmered with energy, shadows twisting in response to the artifact. Kale's eyes met Lysera's across the room, and for a moment silence ruled, a silence thick with unspoken words, mutual respect, and dangerous curiosity. "You've come," Lysera said, her voice a mixture of amusement and seriousness. "Most would not dare enter this place alive, yet you walk as if destiny itself guided your steps." "I did not come for conquest. I came to stop the suffering, to protect my people, and to face the truth of what you are. Even queens can be more than their conquests." Its energy began to flare, illuminating the chamber in flashes of silver and violet. Lysera and Kale exchanged a glance. They understood without words that their next choices would determine not only their fates but the fate of entire worlds. "Do you trust me?" Lysera asked, voice soft, almost uncharacteristic. Kale considered her carefully. Trust was not given lightly, not in war, not in life. But he saw something in her, a willingness to change, to listen, to act beyond ego and fear. He nodded. "I trust you, Lysera, but we must act together. Otherwise, everything dies." Then they moved in unison toward the artifact, each step deliberate, each heartbeat echoing the gravity of the moment. The artifact reacted, sensing their combined will. Energy surged, walls trembling, shadows dancing in chaotic beauty. Kale reached out, placing a hand near the artifact, while Lysera's hand hovered above it, her power steadying the unstable force. Their hands met in the middle, and for an instant their powers combined, a perfect harmony of human courage and alien mastery. But the artifact would not yield easily. Its guardian, a manifestation of pure energy and will, erupted from its core. It towered above them, a swirling force of light and shadow, its presence a challenge to every thought and emotion. Kale and Lysera faced it together, instinct and intellect combining seamlessly. He struck with precision, she with strategy. He moved with courage, she with control. And together they overcame it, not through force alone, but through trust, coordination, and understanding. When the guardian dissipated, the artifact's energy calmed, glowing softly, no longer threatening. Lysera exhaled, feeling the release of tension in her chest. She looked at Kale, really looked, and saw the truth she had avoided for centuries. Humans were not weak, fleeting creatures. They were capable of courage, morality, and connection that rivaled even the oldest alien powers. Kale in turn saw Lysera anew, not merely as a queen, a conqueror, or a myth, but as a being capable of change, compassion, and understanding. The war between them had forged something unexpected, respect, admiration, and the beginnings of something neither fully understood yet. You did it, Kale said quietly, a rare smile touching his face. We did it, Lysra corrected, her eyes meeting his. In that glance, centuries of loneliness, pride, and isolation seemed to melt away, replaced by recognition and fragile hope. For a moment, silence fell, filled only by the gentle pulse of the artifact. And then Lysra spoke, voice barely above a whisper. You have awakened something in me, something I thought lost to time. And you have awakened something in me, something I cannot ignore even if I wanted to. Two warriors, two legends, had found not only respect and understanding, but the beginnings of trust and perhaps something more. Affection, recognition, and the spark of something neither had expected. The battle over, the artifact secured, they stepped outside the citadel together. The ruins reflected the first light of a distant sun, painting the alien towers in soft gold and silver. Lysra reached out, brushing her hand against Kale's, a gesture simple yet full of promise. You saved your people, she said, voice steady, and yet you have saved something in me as well. And perhaps that is the strongest victory of all. And Kale, standing beside her, understood something she had long avoided. Even the immortal could change. Even legends could feel, learn, and choose differently. Theirs was a victory not only of battle, but of hearts and minds intertwined across the divide of species, war, and myth. As the sun rose over the alien citadel, bathing the ruins in light, Lysra and Kale stood together. Their journey had tested them, shaped them, and revealed truths about themselves and each other. And though challenges would come again, they now faced them not as adversaries, but as allies, bound by respect, trust, and the fragile beginnings of something deeper. The stars above the Empire shone as witnesses, silent and eternal as two legends. One human, one immortal, stood side by side. The galaxy stretched vast around them, full of unknown challenges and endless possibilities. And in that quiet, beautiful moment, both Kale and Lysra understood a truth more powerful than any artifact or army. Change was possible, even for legends. And somewhere in the quiet, Lysra whispered, more to herself than anyone else, perhaps, even immortality needs a heart to guide it. The Empire would rebuild, humans would thrive, and two legends, once adversaries, now stood ready to face the future together, stronger, wiser, and connected in ways neither could have predicted. The dawn of a new era stretched before them, a time where courage, trust, and heart mattered as much as strength, strategy, and conquest. And as they looked to the stars, both understood. The story of the human warrior and the alien queen was far from over. It was only beginning.